And tonight is a celebration for my birthday. My birthday is tomorrow. And so I printed out some fun, what I found as, again, on Pixabay, right? Because Pixabay, Pixabay, is a copyright free, royalty free website. Um, Thank you, Salmon's Girl. Salmon's Girl said, Happy birthday. So, this is a cake that I found on Pixabay. And what I especially loved about this cake is, it has macarons on top, right? I think that's how you say it, macaroon, macaron, whatever. It looked so delicious. This is extremely decadent. And then, of course, I made one of these for my kids when my kids were young. I would We would use the food dye and we would make the rainbow colored cake, and they love that. Love that. Right? Kids are all about the color and they just love that. So for tonight, I have actual macarons that I bought that I'm going to use as my inspiration for painting in gouache. So this is the set that I bought. It has what? Strawberry flavored, chocolate flavored, raspberry flavored. That's the filling on the inside. And then birthday cake flavored. And you can see, look at this. This is the birthday cake. You see the little ones that have the sprinkles on them right there? That's the birthday cake ones. Oh, they're so fun. So we're going to have fun painting those during the, hey, S. Diedrich, welcome in, welcome in. We're going to have fun painting those. I like to paint from life. I enjoy that, where you have something in front of you and then you're working on painting it. And I like that actually better than a photograph, although I can paint from photographs all day long. So I can paint this cake, but we're going to start out by painting a real live macaron, and I'm going to eat one. That's I treated myself for my birthday. And then I am a little bit of a candy hound, so I found some when I was looking for the macarons. I found some jelly beans, and of course they have lots of. Thank you, thank you. Somebody else saying happy birthday. So there are all these beautiful colors of the jelly beans. So I thought, how fun would that be? Put a macaron on a plate and scatter some jelly beans around, and let's do that for our picture. So we have choices. We always have choices. And once you start doing the painting thing regularly, you get overwhelmed with choices. Sometimes there are so many different things that we can do and we can paint, and so many different supplies that we can paint with. Boy, and I am going to share with you now some of the various supplies that you may come across if you're thinking about painting with gouache. So what is gouache? And it's spelled Gouache. Sorry, there is an E on the end, gouache. And gouache is simply an opaque matte watercolor. With watercolor being transparent, you're building up the boldness of the color. So you start with a very light wash, and then you're building up the drama and the punch of the colors from there. However, with gouache, gouache is a very opaque, matte, flat, meaning it's easy to photograph, um, bold color, generally straight out of the tube. And it is important, just like with watercolor, to learn what's called water control with your gouache. So we're going to squeeze the gouache out of a tube, just like I do with the professional watercolors. I buy the ones in the tube because I like the tube watercolors. Actually, I like the tube watercolors better than the pan watercolors. I'll show you an example of a pan gouache in just a second, so you'll know what a pan is. And I find I just prefer the paint, at least if I'm in my studio, I prefer the paint straight out of the tube. And so I'm going to show you now some different brands of gouache so that when you're in the store and you're looking for gouache, if this inspires you to go out and make a gouache painting or pick up some gouache, I'm going to show you some of the different brands that are available and the pluses and the pros and the cons of why you might want to pick up one brand over another brand. So this is a company, Stone Ground Paints. They specialize in watercolors, but about 2 years ago they came out with a line of gouache because they're both watercolors. It's just the gouache is opaque, right? And so same pigments, they're just adding a mattifier and a something to make the paint opaque, usually a titanium white or something like that. So these are pans. These are half pans of paint, and this is a sample of the Stone Ground Paint Company gouache. Now, not all gouaches can be put into pans. You have to work on the formula in order to get it right, because often if you take gouache from a tube, like the Arteza brand, you may be familiar with that brand, Arteza. I have a huge box of the Arteza gouache, but if I were to try to squeeze it into a pan, I've tried it, by the way, and then let it dry, and then try to re-wet it, what happens is it gets overly dry and brittle in the pan, and it doesn't work well from a pan. So the paints have to be formulated to hold enough moisture that they hold together in a pan like this. So there are some companies, as I said, the Stone Ground Paint Company, that make gouaches in pans already, which are a lot easier to travel with if you want to pick up and travel. It's a lot easier to travel with a set of gouache in pans. But if you have the luxury of being in your house or in your studio, then my favorite by far is to work with tubes. And there are many sets that I am going to show you that I can tell you right now, any of the sets that I show you are great sets, okay? And you'll be able to have success with them. The thing is that in order to buy some of these paints economically, you want to buy mixing sets. So for instance, this is a Holbein gouache, super, super, super great quality, price to go with it, a little bit expensive, but I just watch, for instance, on Whatnot or whatever other platforms that you might be on that have art supplies like this available. Sometimes you can pick them up for a song and a dance. So that's why I want you to be aware of the brands. This particular brand, the Holbein brand of gouache, is on the high end in terms of the expensiveness of it and the fineness of it. And so you may only want to buy a mixing color set. So this has your red, blue, and yellow mixing colors, and then your white and your black. So a lot of the starter sets you're going to find have these starter colors in them. Here's another set by a company named M. Graham. So there it is. It says the basic set, right? And the company name is M. Graham. It says gouache on the back. One of the artists that I watch on YouTube, this is his favorite paint, is the M. Graham. So I had to get some to try it out. And this actually has natural honey in it, and that's what helps to keep it moist and really beautiful, luxurious to work with. These are on the expensive side as well. It is the basic set of mixing colors. So the same thing, you've got a red, yellow, blue, white, and black. Okay, then there is another company, very, very famous for what they call their designer gouache, and it's Winsor Newton. So Winsor Newton they have beautiful gouache. It's price-wise the next step down, I would say, from the other two, but excellent. I would definitely recommend it. It's called Designer Gouache by Winsor Newton. Now, these are sets that I found a good deal on, and I bought them when they were a good deal. So again, you have the yellow, the red, and the blue, but this set gives you a green as well. And you can see I already started working with it, and the white is getting low. So I always recommend that if you have an opportunity to pick up a large white or an extra white, because you do a lot of color mixing, especially if you have a mixing set like this. You're going to need more than that one tube of white. And Pebeo has you see this studio gouache? It's huge. It's huge compared to the other ones. So here is an example of a gouache tube, right? And look at this one. Oh my gosh. And great value for the money. Fantastic value for the money. So this is the Pebeo Paint Company, and this is their studio gouache, and you can get it in the large format. This is 100 milliliters. And so this studio gouache can be used with the Winsor Newton, it can be used with the M gram, and it can be used with the Holbein. Okay. So if you see something like this, even if it's one of these other brands and it's a large white gouache, snatch that sucker. Because it helps a lot when you go to color mix if you have a large white. Now, there's also, besides these large tubes in the individual colors from Pebeo, Pebeo also has this really nice studio gouache set. So what I like about this set is it's 12 colors, and it's very economical for the price, and it works beautifully. It's a very, very nice wash as well. So if you are starting out and you don't have any gouache right now, I recommend a set like this, because from a price perspective, it's very reasonably priced, and you get more colors than just those 5 mixing colors. So it's a little easier to mix when you have like a turquoise to start with and a green to start with, rather than just having the 5 mixing colors. Now, if you're used to mixing colors like I am, then the mixing color sets like this with just 5, I can get thousands of colors out of that. But if you are new to working with color mixing, then I highly recommend that you get a set that already has more colors in it. Now, the studio gouache is also available in tubes like this from Pebeo. So this one is burnt sienna, and it's an individual tube that I got because this color was not in the set, see? And I wanted this if you're doing either portraiture or landscapes. It helps to have a burnt sienna. And the 2 tubes that I like to have in large size are a large white and a large yellow. And I don't care whether it is gouache or whether it is acrylic or whether it is oil paint, it's the same thing. You want a large white and a large yellow because you're going to use those quite a bit for your color mixing. Okay, so that's why I have the big ones of these. Now, these gouaches that I've shown you, the Holbein, the M gram, the Winsor Newton, and this Pebeo, they're all what I would call traditional gouaches. By that, I mean it is in the watercolor family. That means that if you're laying down layers of color and then you put water on top of a layer, that underlayer could potentially reactivate and the colors could mix together. So you do need to be aware of that when you're painting with a gouache as well as a watercolor, is if you put a bunch of water on it or a watery color on top of another layer, it could reactivate the layer underneath it. So that's a traditional gouache. Now there's another type of gouache called an acryl gouache or an acrylic gouache. So some people like the feel and the look of gouache, the saturation, the beautiful colors, the fact that the painting dries matte. And so some people love that, and they want to be sure that then they can easily photograph their work. So a lot of illustrators use gouache because it makes their illustrations when they're finished perfect for photographing. There's no shine and no opportunity for the picture to have hot spots and things on it because the surface of it is nice and matte and flat. So some people like that finish, but they don't like the fact that the paints reactivate when you put layers over top of each other. And so there's such a thing as acrylic gouache or acryl gouache. So this is the Turner brand that you can get at Jerry's Artarama. And you notice this is also a mixing set with the addition of a green. And that means that when this layer dries, it's permanent, it's stuck in place, it's not going to reactivate with water, and you can safely put another layer of paint right over top of it. So a lot of people like working with the acrylic gouaches and the very, very fine Holbein gouaches. This is your traditional gouache from Holbein. That means it acts like a watercolor and it reactivates. But Holbein has a whole line of acryl gouaches. Again, Holbein, beautiful colors. But this is the acrylic version. So once that layer is dry, it's not going anywhere. You can layer more colors on top and you will not reactivate the layers underneath. So if you're brand new to gouache, you may want to try the acryl gouache first so that you get a feel for how gouache works. And also, you'll get the benefit of that beautiful, opaque, matte finish that's easy to photograph. So then you'll get a feel for how to put water with it to get the right consistency, because you want kind of like a cream consistency when you're working with it. And so there are the two types. Regular gouache, if it doesn't say acryl or acrylic on it, it's traditional, regular watercolor style gouache. If it says acryl or acrylic on it, then you know that it's got an acrylic base and it will not re-wet. So it's just up to you which type you would prefer to work with. If you're a brand new beginner, I might suggest getting a small set like this or a set of 12 like that of the acrylic gouache to start with, just so you get a feel for how to control the water with your gouache, because that's always a challenge for people who are brand new to working with gouache, is getting the right consistency of water. So it can help if you're starting out to learn with the acrylic gouache. Now, what kind of paper do we use when we paint with gouache? Because it is similar to watercolor, we're going to use watercolor papers, and you can use a mixed media paper as well. So here is a watercolor pad. This is from Master's Touch, which is a Hobby Lobby product. And I like the square shape of it. It is these are 8 by 8 inches. Oops, let's see, there's a painting I was doing on there. That's watercolor, regular watercolor. But it has a nice texture to the surface, and that's what we would call cold press watercolor. Now, the one that I use most of the time, the paper that I use most of the time that you've seen over and over and over again in my videos, is the Canson XL watercolor paper, because their watercolor paper is 140 pound. That's a nice thickness. And then it is cold press. So it has less texture than the paper I just showed you from Master's Touch. It still has a little bit of texture, but it has less texture. And to me, this is the perfect mixed media paper And you can see here, I'm almost finished with this pad, and this was a pad of 36 sheets. So I go through this paper. I usually buy them when they are 2 for 1, or I've bought specialty papers from critter shops here on Whatnot as well, watercolor papers. So keep an eye out when you're watching shows on Whatnot for people that are offering, good quality papers like these that you can use for your artwork. Now, another pad that I like to use is this Fabriano mixed media paper. So it says right here, mixed media. The Canson is 140 pound. That's how thick it is. It's nice and thick to take watercolor. This one says it's for dry and wet media, but it's only 108 pounds. So it's a little bit thinner, but I like the surface because there it's even more smooth than the Canson XL. And when you're first starting out painting with gouache or with watercolor, sometimes that texture can freak you out, because you go to put the paint down and it's dancing over top of that texture, and you don't quite know what to do with that. So if you are new to watercolor or new to gouache, I would certainly recommend this mixed media paper as a start. Now, each time I do these workshops, I save the workshop to, it goes to my past shows on Whatnot, but that only lasts about 90 days on there. So I also save them to my lives tab on YouTube. And after the show, I go back in the next day and I add the links to these art supplies. So on Whatnot, I sell my finished artworks, greeting cards, bookmarks, that kind of thing. So my finished art and prints. But if you want the raw supplies like this, you can go find the links in my YouTube video description 1 or 2 days after the workshop is finished. I go back in and I put that in there. All right. So this, for instance, this paper will be linked in the description of the video. Now let's talk about some books, because you know that I like to learn from books. Somebody poured their heart and their soul and their knowledge and their wisdom into these books. And I love to read through them, look at the beautiful pictures, and get a feel for how to use the paints that I have. And maybe it's even paints like acrylic paints that I've been painting with for over 20 years, but I like to learn from somebody else's techniques and then incorporate that into mine. So here is a book, one of the first ones that I got, called The Art of Gouache. And this is by a gentleman named Jeremy Ford. And I just love this illustrative approach to painting, like on the front of the book here. And then I started looking through the book and I went, okay, this is not a beginner book. Yes, there's a lot of great hints in here, but this is in the beginning, The Art of Gouache. And you look at that, this man is incredibly talented with gouache, been using it obviously for a million years, and his artwork is just stunning, stunning. And so he does show you with lots of beautiful pictures his techniques, his layering techniques. And then here he talks about the 3 different approaches. This is what I like about this book, the 3 different approaches to gouache. So there's his approach, which is rather detailed. Then the illustrative approach. Remember I talked about how you use gouache often for illustration. Illustrators will use it. So this is a more simplified version, kind of like what I did on the sugar skull last week. And then this one is where you add in more detail and more finesse to it. So there are several different styles that he discusses in this book. And as you go through, he tells you what his preferred style is. But my favorite style is what he calls the poster style. So there is that that look that I like, very flat and blocks of color. Oh, that is my favorite. That's what attracts me so much to gouache. There you go. He teaches you that project. What? That is a gorgeous project. But you know what? That is not a beginner project. That is not a project I would recommend for beginners, which I realized once I got the book. I said, I need to get a couple of books that are more beginner friendly for gouache. And so what I found, two very fun books. Again, these will be linked. The books will be linked in the description of the video on YouTube tomorrow or the next day when I can get to a cafe and get on my computer. So this one is called Getting Started with Gouache, and it's Emma Block is the artist. And so here for birthday celebrations, here's a cute little project that she has. See how that's much more simplified? And then she gives you the instructions and the colors and everything for that. So that's more my beginner speed for gouache. And then this book, Gouache in 4 Easy Steps. And this is by Anna Kaliadich. And it is so much fun as well. This is the book that gave me the inspiration to go to the store and get some macarons, because here you go. She has a project in the book. She has a bunch of food projects in the book, and they're the macarons. I was like, I can do that. That's what I like about these two books I just showed, is that they break it down and they make it fun for a beginner to be able to paint with gouache. Much more user-friendly for us who are first-timers with gouache. Now, I have done gouache before, and I am familiar with painting with gouache, so I could move on to the more fancy book from Mr. Ford, but I am working my way through the projects in these fun books before I get to the much fancier book, because I want to get more of those under my belt. Okay, so the last one, Salmon's Girl was asking, what's the last one? It's called Gouache in 4 Easy Steps. The cool thing is this artist also has watercolor in 4 Easy Steps. And I have that book as well, because why not, right? When you find a good book with imagery that you really enjoy, why not get multiple books from that author if the author has it? All right, so what I'm going to do now is, one more thing before we get started with painting. Woohoo! I can't wait. I wanted to mention that, for instance, I got this M-gram set, mixing color set, right? If you find one of these, a small set in some of your favorite types of paint, go ahead and pick it up. So this M-gram is very, like I said, a very fine. I'll find the name of the artist that recommends this. I love his stuff. I watch him all the time on YouTube. His name just escapes me right now. And so I will link him in the description of the video when I put the description in for YouTube, okay? And so you can go check him out too. But if you find a little set like this, grab it, pick it up. But what I did is I went to a show and M-gram was there. And so I have the basic colors that I can color mix from, but there are certain colors that are difficult to color mix to get exactly what you want. Or you may want what's called a convenience color. So you just can grab it and go with that instead of having to mix everything with your mixing set. So notice I got extra white, of course, and then in watercolor and gouache, there's this warm yellow called Gamboge, lovely color. Then Quinacridone Rose. So if you're going to do flowers, I find it helps to have a good rose color. This is a good green. So this one is a Viridian. So that is quite a punchy or quite a bright green. So it's good to start with that and then make darker greens and lighter greens from that. Ultramarine blue, which is just a different kind of blue than your mixing blue. Yellow ochre. So especially if you're going to do landscapes or even portraits, it can be helpful to have a yellow ochre. A burnt umber. That's if you want to age something and make it look old. You can just put a wash of burnt umber over it and instant antique. And then this one is Dioxazine purple. So yes, I can mix purples, but I find it's very convenient. So these are called convenience colors. It can be convenient to have a grab and go purple as well. So even I had all the colors in front of me. Which ones did I want to pick up so that I could put them together with this basic set, and then I can mix any color that I want. Those were the additional colors that I decided to choose. So I just wanted to let you in on that little secret, is if you find a good basic set, you can get a couple of other colors like these to add to it, and then you'll be good to go to make any color that you want. But tonight we are going to work with the Pebeo set because, like I said, it's a terrific basic set for you to work with. That's this one right here. Fantastic basic set. Great price on this set. And I'll have links to these art supplies in the video after the videos are over. Okay. Oh, another thing that I like to have on hand is a dropper for controlling my water, good water control. And then you're going to want some sort of palette. So a lot of people work with maybe just a plate or a palette like this where you can squeeze the colors in and then mix here. You can just do something as simple as a little plastic or ceramic plate like that. Okay, I'm going to take you up over top of the table. So what we're going to start with, remember we're going to make macarons, right? So why don't I do this? Why don't I take a macaroon and I will just set it out here on the table. One like that. These look so cute, right? With the little, okay, so let's set that maybe off to the side. Now, one of the things that I like is, can you see the shadows right there? They make a lot of shadows, and I love the shadow. That's why I love painting from life often, which is called a still life, because it's difficult to imagine the shadows that something gives you sometimes. And hey, I'm going to eat one of the chocolate ones while I'm talking to you. All right. This is my birthday. And then let's take a couple of jelly beans. Why not, right? Oh, where's a blue one? Oh, come on. It's going to make me do a bunch of them to find a blue one. Okay. Let's just put a couple of fun. You know, we don't want brown. No. We'll put some yellow, some pink, green, blue, red. There's one that has a couple of colors to it. There's another pink one. What the heck, another red one. Okay, there. We're going to paint that. Why not? I get to eat all of this. Yummy, right? Salmon squirrel, I know. I love Jelly Bellies. Oh my goodness. Like I said, I'm kind of a candy fiend. How do you keep from eating? That's funny, Salmon Squirrel. I can't keep from eating, and then I start choking. Okay, isn't that cute? I love that. When you can actually see what's going on. Now I want to do this just a little bit more. Imagine that instead of looking at it straight down like you are, you're looking at it a little more from the sides so you can see the stuffing. I want you to be able to see the stuffing. So let's go ahead and use a pencil, just a pencil, to get a basic drawing here. So let's just do a basic drawing of the pink one. Now, the cool thing about working with gouache is that it will go right over top of your pencil marks. And since it's opaque, Actually, that's not right. It shouldn't be circular. See, sometimes what you imagine and what your hand draws is not what your eye is actually seeing. So you have to learn to, you have to draw a lot. So you learn to have your hand actually create what you're seeing. Okay, that's the pink one. And then, of course, there's a ruffle around here, and then there's a stuffing, and then there's a bottom layer that starts over here. There we go. And then it goes down a little bit as well. It's almost like drawing a what's that called? A hamburger, right? Okay. And then there's another one here, which means I'm going to have to erase some more. Do not be afraid to erase. Okay, so here we've got, this comes here, right? It can help to do a little bit of planning ahead of time like this instead of just taking your paint and going straight to it. Okay, and then we've got this here, which is where our stuffing is. And then we've got the top, which is way over here. And it comes out and around. And the thing is, when you're looking at something from the side, it's not going to be as, it's going to be more elliptical or more oval than it is going to be around, right? So there we go, something more like that. And then, of course, we're going to have these delicious looking little jelly beans. Oh my goodness, I just love jelly beans. And then I'll move, since I'm an artist, I get to move them wherever I want them to be. If I don't like the way that they are positioned right there. And so here's this one, comes up, and then it kind of goes like that. There's the blue one. Wow, the blue. Oh, I can see my doggie just came in. She's like, Ma. She's starting to do the Ma thing already. Ah! Who else has a doggie out there? It's typical. It's typical. She comes in and she looks and she just wants to see what her mom is up to. What's cool about looking at the jelly beans from here is the jelly beans, of course, have wax on them, right? And because the jelly beans have wax on them, they're taking the reflection of the light, which I think is just so cool. Okay, and then there's another one over here. Take this one right here, like that. Like I said, it's okay to go ahead and draw. You know what? I don't like this one here. I'm going to move it over here to sort of balance the painting out. Why not? So then I'm going to just do this one like this. That's the nice thing about doing something as a still life, meaning having it directly in front of you instead of using a photograph, because it makes, in my opinion, it just makes it a lot easier to modify things, to move them around and get them where you want them to be. Like that. Okay. Not bad, not bad. So now we need to work with our colors. Let's go ahead. I'm going to use the plate method. Oh, but wait, look, there's a cookie on there. There's a macaroon. Okay. There we go. Me, LOL. Okay. Oh my gosh, they're so good. I actually have a cup of tea here that I made earlier with a sealed top so I could drink it. Sorry about that. It's my birthday, so I want to eat my macarons. Yummy. Let me see, make sure that I'm in frame here. Okay, cool. That's in the center. That's in frame. So let's go ahead. Let's get the cookie off of there. And let's go ahead and put some paint on here. Wow. Of course, let me get a paper towel. Make sure there's no more cookie residue on there. You know, I've had artists say, oh, you shouldn't eat and paint at the same time. I totally disagree. Okay, remember what I said about white. So what I'm doing, you'll notice here, there's a little bit of separation in the paint. And so I like these tubes. When you have a metal tube like this, you can't go mashing it around too much because you'll mess up the metal tube. But if you have a plastic tube like this, then you can work with the paint in order to make sure it's well mixed before you put it out onto your palette. So let's take some of the white here. Oh yeah. Boop. You see there's a little bit of separation there. So what do you do if you have separation of your paint? You use a palette knife and you just blend it back together. So every paint is binder and pigment. Sometimes there are fillers as well, but for the most part, it's binder and pigment. So if there's a separation like there was in this tube, then you can just do this to make sure that you've put them back together. Okay, there's a bunch of white because we always need white on the palette. And then let's take some of our fun colors here. So each time that I paint with tubes of gouache, I put out the paint in some sort of palette. So I'm a little conservative with the paint, meaning I don't blob out a lot of it because I don't want it to dry and then reuse it. If you're working with watercolor, regular watercolor, yes, then I can blob it out. And if there's extra left over, I just hang on to that surface and I can add water to it again later. But with gouache, I prefer to use gouache straight out of the tube. So let's do this color, which is primary magenta. That's going to give our variation of pinks. And right, I can always take more because I have the tube here. So there's our pinks. Now, the red, this is a carmine red. So magenta is more along the pink. This one's going to be a little bit warmer, a little darker, the carmine. Okay, then we're going to go with some yellow. Always have to have some yellow on there. Now, I could use the big tube of gouache like this, but in this case, I have a small tube, so I'll use the small one. I'll put out some yellow. And then, of course, we have some blue there. We have a green, so let's put the green out first. I have this spring green. Okay. There we go. And then some blue. So the blue is, let's see, what do we have here? This is violet, so that's a purple. And here's the primary cyan. So here's the primary cyan, which is a mixing blue, right? So you see that color of blue there? But what if I wanted something that was a darker blue than that? I could add just a speck of black to it to darken the color, but that is why I had, oops, I'm getting paint all over me. That is why I purchased in this extra set of M-Gram, the color Ultramarine blue. So let me find that so I can show you. The Ultramarine blue is a deeper blue than the cyan. So if I wanted a deeper blue, especially if I'm doing blue skies or something, I might want to deepen some of it. So I'm going to put just a tiny bit out here so you can see the difference between the mixing blue, the cyan, There's the cyan blue. And then there's the ultramarine blue, quite a bit darker. Okay. So that's why I usually will pick up an extra tube if I can find it of the ultramarine. All right, hold on. Let me make sure I can see the comments over here. All right. So we've got the white, we've got our reds, yellow, green, blue. Do we need anything else? No, I think that, well, brown. Inside this one, there's a little bit of brown for the filling. So I'm going to put just a little bit of brown right here. Oh, look, it's a dog hair. Imagine that. If you have a dog or a cat, I know you know exactly what I mean. Okay, so now I'm going to set this aside in case we need it. And you can do a couple of things here to juice up your paints. If I had put the paints inside one of these and I had little wells, I would take my dropper, which has now disappeared. There it is, because it was in the water. I would take the dropper and I'd put a drop of water in each one of those wells. Now, because this is on a plate, it's not as convenient to do that. So instead, I take a little nature's glitter, yeah. I take a little spray bottle and I spray some water on here. So this is just to get the colors juiced up and get them started. So now I've got these paints beginning to get juiced up, and now I want to get this kind of pinkish brownish color here. Now you can use any of your brushes that you would normally use for watercolor. And so this is a Princeton Velvet Touch #4. And I've got some water over here that I put it in. And so we're going to start out by making something that's kind of peachy colored. And you can see I'm just dragging out that magenta. And then I'm going to drag out a little bit of the yellow. Yes, I'm mixing the colors right there. It's okay. There, that's like a peachy orange. Let's see how it looks. What I'm interested in doing right now is just creating a wash. So a wash actually looks like a watercolor. So yes, these act like a watercolor and you can create a wash with them. All right, now we want a little bit of brown for the inside. Now, let me go ahead and do the bottom here. So now we're gonna do this area right here. And that area in between there has a little bit of brown in it. So I'm just gonna take a tiny bit of the brown, draw that out. It's okay that I didn't wash my brush in between. It's okay. Those colors are going to blend with each other. And this is where we have the stuffing on the inside. That deliciousness, that cream that tastes so good. Okay, just like that. It's okay to play. These don't have to be perfect, right? This is a practice and learning the material. I'm going to pick up a little bit more of the color here and bring it in here. Okay, cool. So I'm just putting a wash of color down and then we're going to go more thickly after that. Now this one has kind of a cakey look to it, doesn't it? So I'm going to take a little bit of that yellow and a little bit of this brown and bring it over here. Ooh, that's too yellow, isn't it? So how do you take yellow and make it a little bit less, well, you just add more brown to it if you want it to be a little bit less yellowy. And now I get to use some of that white. So I'm going to put the white in there. Oh, yeah. So now we're getting something creamy like the birthday cake. Here we go. Now I can feel that the paint is getting a little bit thicker because I picked up some of that white. And I'm actually going to go with a little bit more white. because it does need to be creamier. It needs to look very creamy. There we go. Now this mixed a little bit thicker, which is fine. I can add some water if I want to do it as a wash, but for right now, I'm just going to put this in here like that. Oh, birthday cake flavoring, macaroon, yummy. Okay, so this is a little bit more creamy looking and a little thicker. It's going on a little bit thicker. Oh, lovely. Okay, so that's the top half of that birthday cake. And then here's the bottom half of it. Now the cream inside the birthday cake one is actually white, but I'm going to make it a pretty color. I'm going to make it like it's a pistachio or something like that. Okay, so we're just going to do it with some green. Why not? Why not? I'm dipping back into the water so I can thin it out a little bit more. Let's take a little bit of that green and put it in there. Oh, yummy. Right? The green's usually a pistachio or lime, isn't it? In the macarons. Oh, I'm just looking to see if there are any comments. Okay, so I'm just going to put some green, like this is a, well, one of my favorite flavors is passion fruit. And usually it's a yellow or a green color on the inside. So I'm making it my favorite color or my favorite flavor. Okay, now I'm going to deepen the green just a little bit for the, over here, we have the jelly bean, right? Like I said, you can go right over top of the pencil mark because as you build your layers here, you're going to end up just covering over the pencil mark with the opaqueness. Okay, that's not really as green as I want it. I'm going to add a little bit more in here. Okay, cool. There, that's a little darker green. Okay. Now we've got the green going on. And next, let's block in these other ones over here. So I want to get this, let's see, green. What can I do with the green? I can go in without cleaning my brush is what I'm thinking. If I want to get this blue one over here, I can just mix the blue and the green together, right? And that'll give me an interesting color. Now remember, this is the ultramarine blue and not the light blue over here. So when I want to do a turquoise like the dots on here, I'm going to use the cyan. But for right now, I want to make the darker green the darker blue jelly bean. So here we go. A darker green, darker blue jelly bean like that. Okay. Oh, these paints are, oh, this is like so thick and yummy. It looks delicious. Okay, so there's a nice blue. And next we want to go into the yellows and the pinks. And this is a red. So I'm going to have to clean off my brush because you can only go so far. If I needed to make a purple, I could do that. Actually, maybe we'll do that. We'll make a purple one, even though there's not a purple one showing here. So I'm using the blue on the brush, and I'm going to pick up some of this magenta, and let's create a purple. Just like that. And let me lighten it up just a little bit so you can see that it's very lavendery. Nice. Okay, so we'll make a purple one. We'll make a purple one over here for the heck of it. Something different. Okay, there we go. Just so you can see how you can color mix on the fly. Okay, now I really do need to clean that off. Now what you're going to find is when you're working with gouache, because gouache has a lot of opaqueness to it, you're going to end up having to change your water more often. So what I did was I brought into my studio just a big, an old yogurt container. And as the water gets dirty, I'll just pour it into the yogurt container and refill it from a gallon that I have here. Okay, so let's go ahead now and we'll do the light colors. So we'll do the yellows here. Now it's very thick and a little too thick right here. So I can either spray it with a little more water or I can just dip my brush like this. Oops, let me make sure I've got the comments going. Remember that if you're on YouTube, that I cannot see your comments, okay? Because my Wi-Fi is not working yet. Okay, so I just dipped my brush in order to get it that little bit more wet so I can get that half and half or heavy cream consistency instead of it being so thick like it came right out of the tube. Okay, let's do this one over here. We'll just start it with the yellow. Now the thing about the yellow is it's not as opaque, so the line is showing. So how can I adjust that? I can take some white and I'm going to use the white along the edges and sort of blend it together with the yellow. And that way it'll begin to cover over that line. There we go. Yay. And now this one over here is yellow, but it has a little bit of orange in with it. So because this is traditional gouache, I can go back into the gouache that's beginning to dry, and just by adding a little bit more water, I can reactivate it. That's the beauty of gouache. And yet, if you want flat colors and you want it to dry fully in between and not have the layers lift, then you want to try the acrylic gouache. Here, if the paint dries like it is here and it's acrylic, it can't be re-wet. So you do a lot more water spraying like this with just pure water when you're doing the acryl gouache. Okay, now this one over here is kind of a combination of the yellow and orange. Let's take a little more white and put it in there. All right. I'm going to look up top here since I can't see what I'm doing. Since I have no Wi-Fi, and I just want to make sure that y'all are seeing that. Okay, or I'm going to move it up just a little bit. Okay, no better, no better. Now you can see it better. Okay, so this one had a little bit of orange in it. I'm going to actually put a little more orange in it. What are you doing over there, little one? There's a box in the way. She can't get by, so she's crying. All right, then we have two that are kind of pinky red. So let's take some of the red. What did I do? I got my brush soaked with water, and I'm going to put the red in here. Oh, the red is so pretty. So this is the carmine red, not the pink red, okay? And this one is the same, but I'm going to draw in a little bit of this other color just to make some variation. Just because I want it to be slightly different. Okay, so there's that one right there. Remember, this is the first layer. Like, see how this layer is already dry? That's awesome. And this one is pink. So the best way to make your pink is with the magenta color, not with the carmine color. Although you can make it with carmine, I like to make it with pink. Or what's the color they call magenta. And that's going to give you a nice little pink color. Oh yeah. Now I need to add even more white. See what I mean about the white? You need a lot of white, because this little bit of color is, wow, it's very punchy. It's very what I would call staining. It's quite bold. So you need lots of white if you're going to make it pale. There we go. Got some pink. Ooh, Mom, shame on you. Okay, there we go. There's some pink. Yay. Got a nice little pink one going there. Okay. Now, with the pink on there, remember this is sort of a warm pink. So if I want to warm up that pink, now I'm going to put a thicker, a darker color on there. So I'm going to pick up some of the yellow and I'm going to put it in with the pink. So it almost turns it like coral like. But now it's thicker. I've put a lot of white in there. And so the color is much thicker. It's not going to be a wash anymore. It's going to be, oh, pretty. Pretty, pretty, pretty. Yes, now it's a lot thicker. And it's going to begin to cover that nicely. Okay. My dog is not happy that it's like she's in prison because she's stuck over in another area by that box. She is not a happy camper. I don't know whether y'all can hear her. Can you hear her? Can you hear her? She's complaining. Okay, beauteous. That gives me a nice thick color right there. Oh, I love that. Very rich, very rich. And that's the beauty of working with gouache, y'all, is getting this like sort of cream thick color. Now, underneath that top, it's a little bit darker because there's shadow there. So I'm actually going to pick up a little bit of this brown. Instead of using black, I'm picking up a little bit of the brown and mixing it in there to get a shade. If I used black, wow, black is just, black to me takes you to the shade too quickly. That's why I like using this burnt umber instead. That's why burnt umber is one of my favorite colors for doing shadows instead of doing black. Okay, that's too brown. I need to put some more pinky, pinky, pink in there. I just needed it to be a little bit deeper so it looks like a shadow. It's in shadow. There we go. Trying to give it a little bit of a 3D dimension here. Okay, now the interesting thing is there is a ruffle on the edge of these. Let me show you. Oopsies. Let me pick this up so you can see the edge of the macaron. See how there's a ruffle on the edge right there? But I'm going to put that on last. I'm not going to put that on right now because I need to work on the bottom and then deepen the filling that's in the middle there. Okay, so let's take this darker color and put it down here as well, down along the bottom. So that wash that I did, I just like to do the wash in order to give me an idea of where the color is going to go. It acts as a guide. And then I'm going to go just a little bit darker all the way on the bottom. Oh, not quite dark enough. There we go. All the way on the bottom there. That's almost too dark, right? It looks like there's stuffing on the bottom. Okay, I'm going to go over it with a little layer of this right here to incorporate it. There we go. Okay, now I want to deepen that brown that's in the middle there. That's supposed to be the chocolate. Let's say it's chocolate inside that one. So I got my brush wet so I can get the paint to flow. So you're going to be doing that a lot. Getting your brush wet to make the paint flow. And then here comes the chocolate. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. There we go. Nice and rich. That looks delicious. Now I'm putting this on, and then when the layer above here is dry, I'm going to go put that ruffle along the edge here. Okay. So, ooh, that is a chocolate stuffed macaroon. That looks delicious. Yummy, yummy. Okay, let's see. Okay, I'm just checking to see if there was anybody else I needed to say hello to. Shout out, shout out. Okay, so let's go ahead and I'm going to put another coat on here. Let's do that pistachio. Let's do that pistachio in the middle first there. So I'm going to pick up more of the green, make it very rich, put a little bit more of the white in with it, make it kind of pastel-like, and then mix it in with the other. Oh, it looks very minty, very minty. What flavor do you think that is? What flavor do you think this beautiful minty color is? I added the white because I wanted this layer to be uh, thicker and darker than the other one. Hold on just a moment. Ugh, my phone. Come on, y'all. Okay, there we go. All right. So we're going to add that minty looking flavor there, which to me is like the ooh, passion fruit. Passion fruit or pistachio flavored, right? Usually it's pistachio. Actually, I think I want it to be a little bit thicker right there. Okay, that's good. Now we do have the green over here. So the green jelly bean. So I'm actually going to put some of the light area on top there and on the ends to thicken that up a little bit. And then I'm going to pull some of the darker color to do the underside of it because it's darker over here. Oh, that water control. Water control. Okay, good, 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 good. So now it's lighter on top where the lights are, and it's darker on the bottom, the green one. Okay, let's do the creamy cream. The top here of the birthday cake. So I actually want this one to be a little bit, this layer. I'm grabbing a bunch of white. And remember, we can reactivate with water simply by adding more water here. We can reactivate this traditional gouache that we have. Now I want it to be a little bit lighter. So I'm adding more white. There we go. So it looks kind of like a half and half or like a cream. Oh, nice. See how it's nice and thick now? So when I lay this on here, it's really going to look creamy. And that's what a lot of people just love about gouache is the creaminess of it. Okay, let me just do this and get over the lines with that. Gorgeous, gorgeous. Okay, that's the nice creamy top. And then there's the top, and then over the side is the ruffly part. So we're going to wait on the ruffly part a little bit, and I'm going to put a darker version of the cream here on the underside. Just added a little bit of that brown right there, right? So it's just a little shady version of it. There we go. Like that. There's some ruffle there too, but I will get the ruffle afterwards. Oh, they're looking good. Now they don't have all of the 3D effect to them yet because we don't have all the shadowing going and we don't have all the ruffling going yet, but we will. We will here shortly. Okay, let me see what else I can do for, let's add a little bit of yellow in here and we will work on the yellow of the jelly bean. So I'm just putting another coat on here to thicken it. The nice thing about gouache that's a little bit different from regular watercolor is that if the paint is sufficiently thick, you can lay it on top of the previous color and it won't lift the color. As long as you don't overwork it, it won't lift the color underneath. Okay, let's do this. I'm adding a little bit of that magenta in there to get that sort of light orange. And I took some of the yellow and now I'm coming over here to this one and I'm giving it a second coat. So realize you can build up your coats. The nice thing about the gouache is it's going to dry pretty quickly like you would expect with a watercolor. Okay, good. This is still a little bit wet. And then here, what else do we want to do with that? I want to take this purple and I want to lighten up the purple just a little bit. Ooh, a lot more than that. So I'm getting like a lavender color and I'm going to put that on the top half of this. There we go. You see how it just goes right over top of it? Oh, yes. Love it. Love it, love it, love it. Now, if I overwork it, like I sit here and I play with it and I overwork it, you're going to get that bottom layer coming up. Okay, okay. Let's see here. Now, for the blue, I'm going to take some of this blue and I'm going to add a little bit of the white to it. I'm making some of the lighter version of the colors for the jelly beans. So the area where the light is hitting, like for instance over here, is lighter. So I'm just layering it right on top, and because there's a lot of white in it, it sits over top of the color underneath, as long as I don't overwork it. Okay, now I want some of that orangey, this carmine right here. I'm going to add just a little bit of white to it so it makes the color lighter and more dense. And then I'm going to come over here with this one. Oh, not quite light enough. You want some contrast to show, so you have a darker area and a lighter area. There we go. Now we got it. Okay. And then with this one over here, it's more of the pinky red. So I'm going to take some of the pinky red here and I'm going to add just a little bit of the white to it to get my lighter color. And then this one happens to be lighter right in here. And it's actually not enough white in there. Okay, there we go. Now it's showing up a little bit more. Now this pink one, there is a bit of a shadow over here on the side. So I'll add that shadow. For this yellow one, these two yellow ones, there's some shadowing going on. So I'm actually going to bring a little bit of the brown in with the yellow here. Can you see how it's just subtle? And then I'll do this. So I'm adding, by adding a little bit of shadowing in there, I'm trying to give these some dimension. Let me get a little bit darker here. a little bit darker. So now I've got, you know how I usually tell you we want a mid-tone, a light, and a dark, right? Okay, let's work on this yellow one here. I'm going to bring some of the green in with it and some of the brown. Oh, a little bit more yellow there to get an interesting color. And then this comes up like this. So you don't have to do exactly what color you see. You can get playful with it and put some interesting colors in there. Okay. Now, if you look at my water, you're going to notice the color looks brown. You see that? So that's when it's time to pour this out and get yourself some fresh water. So I just got rid of that water, and now I actually have more water here on the table. So let's take this and we're gonna pour some more water in there. So I like to keep adding fresh, fresh, fresh. Okay, so this is almost dry. Let's work on, now I can speed it up like this if I want to. I can grab out a heat tool and speed up the dry time. All right, now let's go ahead and I'm going to work over here on sort of the ruffle on the side. Okay, what that means is if you want to get something that is, hold on a second, if you want to make a shape that's a broken shape, you can make sure that your brush is very dry and drag it across the area, and that will give you skips. So here we want sort of that peachy look, and the peachy look was over here. And with a little bit of water, I can reactivate it, all right? And then I want to, instead of painting it like this at a slight angle, I'm going to pull it across almost flat. So I'm just going to get it here and pull it across almost flat. And my brush is much drier also. And so it gives me what's called broken color instead of it being smooth. Let's get a little bit more of that going on there. And so I can have the broken color over top of that chocolate, and it gives the impression that it is crunchy, that it has texture to it. Here again, I'm making sure that the brush is a little bit drier, and there's also crunchiness along the bottom here. So let me drag it across and get some of that crunchiness going on. Get some crunchiness out over the edge. Okay. So now I'm going to add just a little bit of white to it because I want to highlight it a little bit. And I'm actually going to come in here and with the tip of the brush, I'm adding some of that, some of the ruffled edge. Okay, again, here, down here, I'm adding some of the ruffled edge just with the tip of the brush. Okay, there we go. So now we've got some ruffle on there. Let me get just a little bit more of that going so you can see it a little bit more. Let me just do that. I'm just tapping it. So you'll notice when I'm in here, I'm just constantly color mixing. There we go. So we've got some ruffle going on there. Now also, we've got a bit of a shadow here. So I'm just adding a little bit of a shadow here and here. That is with a little bit of that brown in there. I'm just getting a little bit of, I'm trying to give it a little bit of dimension. We've got some shadow going there. Okay. Now let's come up to this one, and I'm going to create the ruffle there. So I want to go into the little bit, I don't want it to be too creamy. I want to pull some of that brown in there. Now right now it's too wet. So I want it to give me some of that broken color. So I'm going to dab off some of the wetness. And then I'm going to come in here and I'm going to go by the side and I'm going to add some of the ruffling. Ooh, yummy. And then here, I'm going to add some of the ruffling here too. So I go back and forth between these. And keep working on it until I get the effect that I want. There we go. So that will need more. But I'm going to move along for now. Let me see if I can get just a little bit more in there. A little bit more of the ruffle. And then I want just a slight darkening here because I want to give the impression that it's rounded like that. Rounded. Let's do that. Let's get that impression that it's rounded. Okay, cool. Now, let's go ahead, and this part up here is dry to the touch. So now I can go on top of it with these little candies. Oh, they look so good. So let's take, I actually think I want to take a smaller brush than this one. I have a brush called a spotter. So if you look at the spotter, can you see it's at an angle? Sometimes it's called an angle brush or a spotter brush. So I can take the spotter and I'm going to go directly into the red. And then I'm going to put some dots here. Oh my goodness. This is such an awesome brush, you guys. Love this brush. Okay, remember if you're over on YouTube, I do not have Wi-Fi right now. So I do not have my YouTube comments on. I cannot see the YouTube comments. So if you're commenting on YouTube or you have questions on YouTube, you're going to need to pop over onto Whatnot in order to ask your questions. Okay, let's get some green ones. So I'm going to go into the green here. Looks like I need just a little more water for the green to hydrate it. And a little bit more water. Keep hydrating, keep hydrating. There we go. So that's the spotter with green. And then let's put some green specks on there. Aren't these spotters awesome? This little spotter brush is amazing. Oh yes, these are little candies. Delicious little candies. Okay, let me put that there. And then let's clean that off. Another one is going to be the yellow. So I'm just going to come right into the yellow, nice and creamy. There it is on the end of the spotter brush. We're going to spot some yellow ones on there. Oh yeah. The last one will be the blue one. I know there's some white ones on there too, but okay, so that's the yellows. Nice. Oh, it's looking delicious. Now remember how I said that almost turquoisey blue? I'm going to use this cyan for that because the cyan looks almost turquoise. Okay, here we go. Let's spot it up. Nice. I do love my candy. Love me some candy. Oh, that looks good. I can't wait to eat it. I get to eat that one. Oh my gosh. Let's try a couple of white ones. Let's see what happens. Let's see whether they show up on that background or not. Doop. Let's get some of the white in there on the spotter. Oh, they're showing up a little bit, aren't they? Okay. Because the background is a cream color, it's not exactly white, so the white ones are showing up. Nice. Oh, yummy. Okay, there we go. Fantastic. Oof, that looks good. All right. Now, while I have the spotter brush, I want to go and put the white on these. All of these are dry down here, and they're little white spots where there's a highlight because, of course, jelly beans uh, have a wax on them, right? So I'm going to take white here on my spotter brush. Let's make sure there's plenty of water on there so it'll come off of the brush and not want to stay on it. Okay, there we go, on the spotter. So now we've got a bunch of white here, and a little bits of white there. And then on this one, we've got some white here. I love the way that the gouache, the way when you layer it, the way the white sits on top is fantastic. When you're working with watercolor, what you find is the white of the paper becomes, or in general, is your white. And so you don't have the same flexibility to go back in and add your whites like we do here. And that's one of the things I love about working with gouache is the way I can come in here and add these little white highlights. Now I'm going to put in the shadows so these don't look like they're just floating on top here. Okay, this one has a big one right there. Like that. Jelly beans. I love the jelly beans. There we go. Almost done with the jelly beans. One more, one more. This one sort of went like that. Okay. Oh, loving the jelly beans. All right. So now what we need to do is put in the shadows. I don't know if you can see it from up there, but there are shadows all around the jelly beans and the macarons. And so I want to make sure that I drop some shadows in there. And to drop the shadow, let me get a proper brush. I'm going to use a brush called a cat's tongue brush. So it's not exactly, you could use a brush like this, that is the Princeton Velvet Touch number 10. Has a beautiful sharp point, so you can work right in there like that. But I like to use this cat's tongue brush because you'll notice when the cat's tongue brush is on its side, it's very skinny, and when it's on flat like this, you get more coverage. So I like the flexibility that I have with this. This is actually a brush from Christy Rice. So I'll make sure to link these brushes. Um, and this says Watercolor Curious on it, a #1 cat's tongue. So I'm going to start by getting it wet, and let's see what we can do to create some fun shadows. We already created this kind of purpley color over here, right? And now I'm going to take some of the yellow. If you didn't know, purple and yellow make a kind of a greeny brown. So here you can see like a green brown. I can test it up here. You see how that's a little too brown. I need something that's a little more blue than that. So I'm going to grab some of the ultramarine and bring it over here and blue that up a little bit. Let's see. There we go. Okay, that looks a little bit more like what I want for a shadow. Yes, a little more gray. And I'm going to add a lot of water to it because I don't want it to be thick and creamy. I want it to be washy. Okay, so let's get the main shadows, which are right here. There we go. See what I mean about the cat's tongue? I love the cat's tongue. Okay, like this. So this is the darker initial shadow. So we've got this right here coming this way and coming into here, right up to the edge right there. There we go. So that's the initial shadow. There's a secondary shadow over here, but we have to add a lot more water in order to get that. And then with our jelly beans, we also have some shadows here. And they kind of go like that. So let's get this one, has the shadow over here. That's fun, yeah? Oh, thank you, Love Be My Motive Studio. Said happy birthday. Thank you. I appreciate it. We're celebrating with macarons and jelly beans. Nummy nums. Okay. This one over here has a really, really dark shadow right here. On this side, kind of comes around like this. And then this one has a dark shadow over this way. You can always layer the shadows to get more darkness too. Yes. Okay. Now, the shadows make such a huge difference in just sort of bringing your painting to life. It doesn't look flat if you're using good shadows. Okay. Sort of do it like that. And then over here, we've got a close one right here. Nice. This one, we've got a big, big shadow over here. And then this one, we've got the darkest shadow over here. And some over here. You see why I like the cat's tongue? Because as I'm turning it, when it's on its side, I'm able to be a little more precise where I put it. And when it's more flat, then I can cover a bigger area. Now, those are the darker shadows. Now I want to add more water. And I can even pick up a little bit of white if I want to lighten the shadow. But I want it to be very washy. And I just added more white to get the color to be a little bit lighter. More water. Let's test it up here. Still dark. All right, more white. More white, more white. There we go. more whites, and then a lot more water because I want it to be just a hint of a shadow. There you go. So that's a lighter color. So now we're going to come around here and we're going to do another shadow. So sometimes your shadows are layered. And that's what we're doing here is we're layering our shadows. So we've got some shadowing, layering over here, and more out here. But you're just gonna, when you're doing the shadows, they're more or less washes. We're not trying to make it super thick. We're just trying to give the concept. Oh yeah, now we're starting to see it. Nice. Let's make this a little rounder. And then even, now see, I can even pick up color from over here and add a little bit more water. And look at, that makes your shadows a little more complex if you spend the time to mix a lighter version of your shadow as well. Because quite often you've got layering to your shadows, but you don't really notice it. You see the most bold shadow, but there are there's different layers or levels to the shadows. And so if you play with that, you'll get a little more realism out of it. Not that I'm the most realistic painter in the world, but I find it just adds that extra interest to what it is that you're working on. If you notice that there are the multiple layers of shadow. Okay, we already almost have it. See, I can pick up a little more color from here. I'm actually mixing it with water right here on my paper. Okay, let's get this one right here that actually has like a little shadow over this way, secondary shadow. This one has a secondary shadow over this way. Isn't that fun? Oh, I love those secondary shadows. This one actually has a secondary shadow this way and this way. I don't know why, but hey, it just does. Okay, cool, cool. All right, well, that was fun. Let me see, is there a little bit of, I just want to add, where's that first brush I was using? That's the number 4. And what I want to do is I just want to add a little highlight because the light's obviously coming strongest from this area, which is why you have the darker shadow right underneath here. So let's go ahead over here and add just a little bit lighter so that even though it's not actually on here, I want to add it anyway. So it just gives you that impression of it being round and that the light is coming from the edge over here. The light is hitting the edge. Nice. Okay. Hey, Winter Powell Art, welcome in. Thank you for wishing me a happy birthday. I do appreciate it. Okay, so because this is a studio gouache, not an acrylic gouache, when this is dry, I'm going to be able to re-wet it with water so I can reactivate the color. For instance, this green is completely dry, but if I come in with some water, just like with watercolor, you see how it's reactivated. So I can continue to use this palette if I wanted to do multiple paintings and keep a similar palette so that the pictures kind of speak to one another. Um, and so that's what I would do here is I would just hang on to this palette and I can re-wet it because it's traditional gouache. You asked another question. Let me see. Let me see. What did you say? What? Cool. Right. Do you seal something acrylic gouache with wax? Okay, you can seal acrylic gouache with wax, just like you would a watercolor. However, I would seal a gouache, an acrylic gouache, I would seal with an acrylic matte varnish. Okay. That way you're consistently keeping your surface matte. Um, if I'm using regular gouache, which is water soluble once it's dry, right? Like I can go back in with a brush and I can reactivate these paints because these are traditional gouache paints. So they're more like a watercolor. And if that's the case, then yes, it is advisable to use like your Dorland's wax or something like that to seal it with, or you can just put it under glass. Of course, like I said, it's re-wettable, so you certainly don't want it to get wet again. So I would put it into a mat and then put it behind glass. But you absolutely, if you wanted to mount this on a panel instead, of putting it under glass, yes, I would use the Dorland's wax. I'm just looking to see if I have the Dorland's wax right here or if it's in the other room. I think it's in the other room. But are you, since you asked that question, Barbara, I assume that you're familiar with Dorland's wax. Is that correct? Because Dorland's wax is an excellent sealer for watercolors. What paper? Okay, nope. All right, then let me see if I can put my hand on it right away so you can see what it looks like. So just keep a look-see at that real quick for a moment. And I'm just looking at my mediums here to see if I can find the Dorland's wax for you because it is like, ah, look at that. How amazing am I? Ta-da! There it is. So see where it says Dorland's by Jacquard. See that? Jacquard. Dorland's wax medium. So that is something that you can use to seal watercolors and traditional gouache like this. So if I wanted to mount this on a panel and not have to put it under glass, then I would seal it with the Dorland's wax medium, where you put the wax medium on and then you gently, with a soft cloth, wipe it off after you give it a little bit of time to set, like wax on, wax off, right? And then it would be ready at that point. It would be waterproof, and you would be able to mount it onto, say, a panel of some sort, or put it in a frame and not have to have it behind glass. Okay? So that is what I do with that. Doo doo. More learning, more learning. You are welcome.